What's up, everybody? Happy Monday. I hope that y'all are having a great start to your week. I'm so excited that we get to do the end of the year podcast together, me and my boo.
Here we are, doing it together.
Here we are. My baby said we can't record this early. He feels like his face is a little swollen.
It
this
is
morning.
swollen. If you're watching this, it's not my best
If
look.
you're watching this, hop on over to the podcast app and just listen.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Stay on YouTube. What's
That
up,
was
guys?
kind of rude.
It's not. You're the one that said it.
But you just intentionally said get off of YouTube and listen because I look bad.
No, I was trying to help you. I don't think you look bad. I think you look cute.
No, I look like a chipmunk.
No, you don't.
I do. Every part of my face is swollen.
Anyways, and you kind of have a morning voice too.
Well, I can get out of that. I can't get out of my face swollen unless you have some like aloe.
Yeah, don't got that. Wow. We are so professional.
Don't got
that. Wow. Okay. Anyways, we should get on with this podcast. But this is our end of the year podcast. And last year we were able to share some of the stats of the year and just celebrate it with you guys because I think celebration is so important and it requires a stop and giving praise and honor where praise and honor is due. And we just want to say thank you and honor you guys for investing time into learning and growing through this podcast because part of the reason that I started this podcast was so I can learn and grow by inviting such incredible people on the podcast to learn from their best piece of advice. And so the fact that y'all tune in each week and listen to the advice and just soak on that just is really encouraging to me because I am so encouraged by getting to do this podcast. And I'm so thankful I'm not the only one. And you guys continue to blow us away. So just this year, the podcast was heard in over 226 countries and territories, which literally blows my mind. So shout out to all of you listening all around the world. Just especially want to thank you for tuning in. I hope we can meet one day. I always say I don't think of people who listen to my podcast as fans. I think of you as friends, and I would love to meet you and hug you and say thank you for listening. And it's probably one of my favorite compliments, and you know this, when I'm like out and about, when someone comes up to me and they say that they listen to my podcast, instead of just saying, I want a selfie, or are you the girl from this or that? When people say like, I listen to your podcast, or, I love this episode is what led me to ... It's just like the greatest thing ever. And so thank you to everyone who listens. Whenever I get to travel and meet some of you, it just really encourages my heart and it's awesome. Also, this is just so crazy. Just this year alone, there were 16,548,829 downloads, which is literally nuts. That's also a 50% increase from last year. And so y'all, like I said, you just absolutely blow me away that this many people are just a part of the Whoa That's Good Sisters and Friends family. And I couldn't be more grateful for doing this alongside of y'all. None of this obviously would be what it is today if it wasn't for all of you tuning in and listening. And so big shout out to you. Thank you. Now it's going to be so fun. We get to recap this year. I think also it's so important, one, to stop and celebrate things. And I think, two, it's really important to stop and remember things. We talk about this all the time, how the Israelites back in the Old Testament, they just kept forgetting what God was doing. And it was so crazy because you're like, how can you forget? Like, these are monumental moments. This is like the Red Sea parting. This is like manna falling from the sky. This is a fire by night and a cloud by day. Almost, did I say that right? This is like big moments. How do you forget, right? But they would just forget. They'd turn away. And so, we want you guys, including us, to remember the things that God has done through this podcast this year and remember some of the things that people spoke over us. And so on Wednesday's podcast, Well, That's Good, we always ask the question, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever been given? And so we've gone through and we have highlighted a lot of just great pieces of advice that have been given this year. And we're going to read through some of them and just remind us all of what was spoken over us this year and dive in a little deeper to some of those things and reflect on what they've meant to us. So I think that you guys are going to be encouraged all over again by some of the awesome things we've heard. And I couldn't think of a better person to kickstart this off with than the advice that we got from Christian Huff on the podcast. When I asked my baby, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
But it was a fitness take. This is not the best advice I've ever gotten.
What was it good? Well, you've been on the podcast so many times,
Yeah, I know.
It's not like the best piece ever, but...
But I was saying, you said the best advice. This is the best fitness advice I got.
That's okay.
I know, I was just providing context for those who are new listening.
So he said, train for performance, not for aesthetics. And that is a good word going into the new year.
That is a good word going for the new year. Yeah, so that advice for me, especially heading into the new year, is so critical because I think we always like to set, New Year's resolutions and goals and routines that we want to try to keep. And a lot of us keep them, and then a lot of us can kind of fail to be consistent with that. And so that advice for me, really spoke to me just on the idea of trying to set a goal and trying to achieve it rather than starting the new year off with, I want to get a six-pack or I want to look better. If you start it kind of with the mindset of I want to try to reach this goal, typically as you train for the goal, the aesthetics of your physique or whatever you're hoping for kind of will follow after that. So kind of just reverse engineering that idea of I'm going to train for this, and then hopefully that will follow.
Because I think, if you're just training for aesthetics, it can get discouraging, and you can be like, oh, forget this, whatever, this is not happening for me. But if you're training for a goal, there's always the encouragement and the hope of, I'm getting closer day by day, you know?
Yeah, well, and aesthetics with social media, you don't know what people are, on stuff or what's filtered, what's edited, and I think it can just create this narrative that's just not actually true. So training to achieve a goal.
That was great advice. All right, moving on to Brooke Lidgertwood, who I love, and we had such a good podcast, and she said, this was so good. She said, if you don't concern yourself with trying to be original and you just try to tell the truth, then 9 times out of 10, you'll be original without even trying to be. And I thought that was so good because it was around the advice for music, creating music. It's so many of us, it's I want to create something that's never been created before and all this stuff. And sometimes when you do that, it can be really hard to actually just create something like that. But if you just focus on, I'm just going to tell the truth. I'm just going to do what's true to me. I'm just going to do whatever naturally is coming out of me. It will be original because you are original, And I think so many times I heard Chris McClarney say one time, he said, I was in this writing room and I had all my pens and papers out and I was like, God, give me the sound of heaven. Give me the sound of heaven. And he was trying so hard to hear the sound of heaven. And he wanted to, write the song that no one's ever heard because it's what heaven is singing. And he felt the Lord finally say to him, you are the sound of heaven. It's in you. I created you. And so whatever comes out of you that's glorifying me, essentially, is the sound of heaven. And so Chris was like, wow, it took so much pressure off of him looking all around to try to get this in him instead of just going, wait, it's already in me, and what's in me I'm going to pour out to others. And it reminded me of that piece of advice that Brooke said, and I just thought that was so good because it's so true. If I sit there and I try to think I got to be so creative and I got to do something no one's ever seen before, puts this crazy pressure. But if I'm you know what, no one's ever seen what God's put inside of me. And so tapping into what's in me and not what's out there is where you're going to find, the true originality.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, this next one's from Ben Stuart, who we have a long history with in our dating relationship.
We would not be where we're at without Ben Stuart's solid book, Single, Dating, Engaged, Married.
And his wisdom. But yeah, no, I love this quote from him. He said, however you conceive of the spiritual life, it's primarily a battle of the mind. I summarize it as what you think about determines what you care about, and what you care about you will chase. Which is so true,
So good.
In life, we have certain things we desire, have certain things that we care about, and it's really just as simple as that. Whatever we care about, you will end up chasing that.
Yeah.
And our spiritual life really is so much of the battle is in the mind, because I can't remember how many thoughts you have in a day, and
a lot.
Most of them are primarily negative, statistically. And yeah, taking those thoughts captive can be something that's super difficult, and that's something that even we struggle with as well as everyone else. Is how do you control your just crazy thoughts of the mind? And and it really is, at least for me, it's such a battle of the mind in my spiritual life.
One topic my team and I started talking about not too long ago was habits, how we can start them and not have to wait to the new year to begin a new habit. One thing that's so important to adopt as a habit is taking care of yourself and getting all your nutrients. My week sometimes can be really long, and I'm going to need all the energy and nutrition that I can get to get through it, but I'm not a fan of taking a bunch of pills. So Athletic Greens makes it super easy to get the daily nutrition that you need without having to keep a collection of vitamins and pill vials, which is just one reason that we love it. Athletic Greens just makes comprehensive comprehensive daily nutrition, really, really simple, to help each of us be our best. AG1 by Athletic Greens is a superfood product that simplifies the path to better nutrition by giving you one thing with all the best things. I got Christian to try AG1, and needless to say, now we love Athletic Greens, and he got his family to love Athletic Greens, so it's really just a great product. They just make it so simple, and it really is just so easy to use. One scoop of AG1 contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food source ingredients, including a multivitamin, multimineral, probiotic, green superfood blend, and more, and just one convenient daily serving. The ingredients in a scoop of AG1 work together to fill the nutritional gaps in your diet to support energy and focus, help with gut health and digestion, and support a healthy immune system. You can basically replace a bunch of products or pills with just one easy, healthy drink. Not only do we love it, like I said, but Christian's family loves it. It's just really easy to love because it has all the things. And they have travel packs, which makes it so easy on the go to just continue on with a healthy lifestyle. It's also lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, and contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything. And what I personally love are the Athletic Greens Vitamin D3 plus K2 drops, because I love vitamin D. It is so great for you. It's always made me feel so much better. It helps your heart health, your bones, your teeth, your immune system, all the things, and it's so easy to use. Plus, this bottle contains over 600 servings, so trust me, you are not going to be running out. It is well worth your money. And because it's drops, you can put it on food or mix it with a drink. No pills to swallow. So easy. To make it even easier though, Athletic Greens is going to give you an immune supporting free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase if you visit athleticgreens.com/woe today. Again, just simply visit athleticgreens.com/woe to take control of your health and give AG1 a try. Yeah, it's so true. I've been hearing I don't know if this is like a thing out there, but I've been hearing this word, and I heard a Nike exec one time. She was giving this talk, and this is out of context, but she said, if I see something once and I like it, I note it. If I see something twice and I like it, then I'm like, oh, maybe we should think about doing it. If I see something a third time, I realize it is a trend and we better get on it. So maybe it's a color scheme or a word or something, and that's kind of how Nike always stays ahead of the game. And I thought about that. I think about that a lot. And, sometimes I think about that whenever I hear things that people say. And recently, I feel like I've heard a couple people just in passing talk about intrusive thoughts. And it's almost like when people talk about intrusive thoughts lately, it's like a buzzword. It's like become like a thing to be like, oh yeah, I have intrusive thoughts. And it's kind of like, oh, I'm a victim to my intrusive thoughts, and I can't really help the fact that I have intrusive thoughts, and everybody needs to cater towards the fact that I have intrusive thoughts. And I think that, we really do, as believers, have to allow God to help us take our thoughts captive, and I think what Ben's saying here is so true. It's like what you care about, what you think about is what you care about. What you care about, you're going to chase. So like if it's something that you have these intrusive thoughts and they're dark thoughts, you have these intrusive thoughts and they're lustful thoughts, you have this intrusive thoughts, like part of the thing that will help you take your mind captive is to replace those intrusive thoughts with thoughts of the things that you care about, with scripture, with the love of God, with your husband and his love for you, with your kids, with your friends, with something sweet. Like I remember when I was little, I was little when I did this, and it's so crazy because to me now I'm like, man, I can learn from my childhood self so much, and I think we all can. As we just simplified things. I couldn't go to bed at night because I would get so scared. And I literally created this it was like a mental show. And it was like every night, I would see, it was literally so funny that I still remember this. I was probably 6, 7. And I would see this rainbow. And it was rainbow and sky, and I would see all my favorite people walking by the rainbow, and I would literally play this in my mind before I go to bed. I remember I would see two mama and my mom and Joe Neal, my aunt, and our dog and blah 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 until I went to sleep, because I was like, okay, if I'm gonna have to think about something good, I'm gonna have to replace it. And if a thought is intrusive, then I think you have to get just as dramatic with your intrusively good thoughts. I'm gonna create a visual that I'm gonna set my mind on. Like the word says, set your mind on things above. And so just want to take a second there to talk about that, because like I said, I think if you hear something so many times, it's worth stopping and doing something about it. And I keep hearing this intrusive thought thing, and we've all been victim to intrusive thoughts. But, it's not just sitting there and letting yourself get defeated. It's saying, okay, how can I combat that? So anyways, just wanted to take the opportunity to talk about that since we were talking about thoughts. Next was Dr. Amen, who I love, and we are going to have on the podcast again next year. I'm really looking forward to that because every time he's on, I personally learn so much, and he's just awesome. But this was such a good piece of advice. He said, happiness is a moral obligation. And I was like, that is so good.
That is so good.
Because, I think so many times, like, we don't really think about that our happiness or sadness or our fear or anxiety, whatever it is, whatever emotion that we're bringing to the table affects the people around us, And so it is actually a great gift to give people happiness. It's a moral obligation to show up with happiness. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're sad and you're going through something, you have to show up and put on happiness. It's not like, creating like a false happiness if you're walking through something. People want you to show up as you are with who you are. But I think in the everyday moments, being joyful, being happy, putting a smile on your face, hugging someone, asking them how they're doing, laughing with someone, like that actually just makes the world a better place. And it's so worth, giving to someone else. It's so kind when someone gives you the joy of their happiness. And so actually thinking about that and doing that in our own life is such a gift to other people.
Yeah, this next one's from David Platt, who we've gotten the pleasure to know the last year or so. And David's so funny because he's the most, like, he's so wise.
Yeah, he's so
everything,
wise.
Even his best piece
very
piece of
intentional
advice.
with everything he says.
He says, surrender, abide, and rest. If we do these things in our life, then we can rest. He will lead us and guide us. He will make it happen if we can do these things. And just the simplicity of that, but also just, I just love the quote.
David doesn't try to impress you with his words. His words are just powerful because they are out of a place of so much wisdom, and I think it's a beautiful thing when you don't have to say something in such a way that it impresses you by the way it's said because it rhymes or it's like sticks or it's like, oh, the way they said that made the room move, whatever. It's actually just his profound wisdom and rootedness in the word and intentionality and love that he speaks in that is so, in and of itself, impressive. But he's not going for impressiveness, so it's not even that, it's impactful. And I think that if we can learn to speak in a way that we're not trying to speak to impress, but we're trying to speak to really impact people, it really changes the pressure you put on yourself and how you speak. It gives you a freedom to just speak out of a place of love. And that place of love is really going to impact people's life. And I think the key to that is intentionality. And right here, it's simple. It's not impressive way to say it, but it's so impactful. Surrender, abide, and rest. That's it. If you surrender your life, so true. If you abide in Christ, if you rest in that, then man, good things will happen and he will lead us and guide us. And so I love that.
Yeah, those are all super difficult things for us to actually do,
Yep.
Like, it's difficult for us to surrender. It's difficult to, abide. Like, when you think about abide, it's actually like you're connected to, and continually abiding in that and then finding rest. I think we also live in a culture where we don't really know how to rest, and doing those three things together and simultaneously, that is how you find rest, which is really cool.
So good. Next up, we got Bob Goff. Everybody loves Bob Goff. He is just awesome, and he said, instead of being distracted with what's going on around you, take a moment to figure out what's going on within you. And that is just great advice. Kind of reminds me of what I was talking about a little bit ago of just instead of searching around all around the world, what's going on here, what's going on there, what's going on there, and trying to get in touch with everything. It's like, no, what's going on in here? Because that's really what matters. That's really what's going to make the difference in my life. That's going to make the difference in the people around me. And sometimes we can get so distracted on what everybody else is doing, how everybody else's day is going, what everybody else's drama is, that we're really not stewarding well what our life is. And so I love that advice. Next up was for King Country, and it said, if you can help people, then do it. We should be people looking to help instead of people looking to say no, which is so good. There's so many accounts on Instagram now that are like giving accounts. Like Jimmy Darts is one that I follow, and he's such a fun one to follow where he'll go up to homeless people or someone in Walmart or someone on the street, just random people, and he'll do something fun and offer them a chance to show kindness. And if they show kindness, then he gives them a lot of money. And it's always just like this really sweet thing of seeing
really
people
cool.
just be kind and give. But that's really inspired me so much to help people in my own life. And so I told Christian something I've been doing that's been like so fun and just so awesome to see the joy on the other side is like I'll go to check out my groceries or go to check out wherever I am, and I ask for cash back. And then when the person's like counting the cash, they're like, what do you want it in? Tens, whatever. And I just say, oh, whatever, whatever's the best. And then she goes to give it to me. And then I say, oh, that's actually for you. And the holiday season has been fun because I'm like, that's for you. Merry Christmas. And it has been like the sweetest thing. I've done it probably four times. And it's just been awesome because each time I've done it, the person has either cried or come around the counter and hugged me. They've just been so shocked. And one time, the cashback thing only offered like $20. Up $20, I was like Walgreens. So I did it, and I was like, and it was Thanksgiving Day, and it was a girl working on Thanksgiving. So I got the $20 back, and I said, oh, that's for you. I said, I wish I could give you more, but I hope this blesses you. And she was just like so shocked and emotional. And so you don't have to do a lot, you don't have to go above and beyond. If you don't have $100 to give, don't give $100. If you have $20, if you have $10, if you have something that can help someone else, you'll be amazed at how far that kindness goes. And so instead of being people that look to say no, well, I'm not gonna do that because that's gonna be awkward, or no, I'm not gonna do that because it's only this much money, can it really help, or no, I'm not gonna do that. It's like, no, help them, like just do it. What's the worst thing that can happen from you helping someone? Not a lot. And so I love that piece of advice.
Well, I mean, even apart from that, I think also too, we can just be so quick to lack compassion for people.
So true. Friends, the new year is almost here, and that means we have a chance to set a new goal and pursue those dreams that we have never seemed to have time for, but now's the time. If you've always dreamed about starting a new career or learning something new, I know just the place for you. I'm so excited to tell you about Liberty University. There is so much to love about this school, from online to in person. I love taking an online class from Liberty University to grow my knowledge in business and ministry, and they are so flexible. I truly did love it. I know you will too. And my siblings also love it so much. Bella's still at Liberty online. My brother John Luke went in person. Will went in person. Obviously, my family loves Liberty. This means that you can actually be anywhere with their online program on any schedule, and Liberty works for you. Liberty has more than 600 online degrees from the associate level to the doctoral level, so I know that there's going to be an option for you. I love to hear stories from my siblings and teammates about their time at Liberty because it's just such a joy. The communities that they met there, just the beauty of the campus that's there, and all the professors that are so awesome. Liberty has a mission of training champions for Christ, and that mission shapes everything they do, from sports to events to having a Bible-based education, which is honestly such a gift. Online and in person both really are incredible experiences. Like I said, my sister Bella is still taking classes from Liberty Online and loves how it flows with her schedule. And the professors are also so helpful, and it's so easy to make your class schedule work with your schedule. All the classes are online, and they have 8-week subterms with no set login times. So maybe you're someone who put a pause in your education. Well, now it's time to jump back in, and the good news is Liberty is for you. Liberty is transfer friendly and gives credit for qualified life experience on the job or military training and a variety of certifications. They have so many incredible classes to choose from, but don't just take my word for it. Liberty was ranked in the top 5 best online colleges in America by niche.com for 2022. Their in-person campus is awesome as well, with state-of-the-art facilities, more than 120 student-led clubs, 20 NCAA Division I programs, plus Liberty offers multiple scholarships and discounts to help you stick to your New Year budget goals too. Visit liberty.edu/Sadie to get started, and because you're a What's Good listener, you're going to get your application fee waived. Heyo! So friend, don't wait, now's the time. Go to liberty.edu/Sadie now and make this year the year that you pursue your dreams. It's kind of one of those things where, somebody pays for you at the drive-thru, the next person ends up paying for the next person, and it's like kindness just multiplies. Kindness is so contagious. And so helping people goes such a long way, not just for them, but for you too in your heart. You'll see, it's like when you do something like that, you realize that you're a child of God, because when you do something, it fulfills something in your spirit saying, this is what I'm supposed to do. Like, this is what I'm born to do. There is something in me that longs to do things like this. That's my heritage, if you will. That's where I come from. And I think that's what it feels like to operate in who you are as a child of God. Super cool. Next one is from Louie Giglio, LG. And he said, before you start out doing anything, make sure you have everything you need operating at 100%.
That's the most Louie.
Love that.
Louie quote advice.
That is the most Louie thing
that I've ever heard.
Louie's so efficient. He really is. And I think this is such good advice. And, I highlighted ones that I wanted to say and I highlighted ones for Christian to say. And I wanted to say that one because I think just like, even with LO stuff that we've done, there's just such a desire sometimes to rush the process. There's such a desire to say, oh, I have this thought, let's do it. Like right here, right now, tomorrow. My friends that work with me always laugh because, they'll say, okay, Sadie, when do you want to do that? And I say, let me guess, today. And I'm like, yes, like I always want to do it right now, today, tomorrow. Like I get so excited about the ideas that we have. But it is so important that before you, just go for it and you just start it, that you actually have everything lined up to be able to do so. Taking the time to prepare, to pre-plan things actually sets you up to do things in such a more efficient way. And Christian and I have been realizing that with our house. I think this is kind of a message in and of itself. So people have been asking us, y'all are building a house, y'all have a baby, y'all have one on the way, are y'all so stressed? And we keep saying, it's amazing. We have not been stressed in the house building process. And I think that's because before we ever even laid the ground, we spent about a year.
Over a year.
Working on the plans of the house, sitting with interior designer, literally picking out everything, going through the details. We had a weekly meeting for like at least 6 months with our builder, with our interior designer, before we even broke ground. Like we had so much pre-planned and prepared that when we started building the house it's building itself in a sense. The builders are obviously doing it, the ones who are qualified to do that, but we are not having to do all that stuff because we did that over the span of a year before. Now, did it take a lot longer? Yeah. But it's been so much less stressful and it's been so much more efficient. And so our house is going up right now and we are able to do all the other things that we're doing because we spent the year ahead of time. And it wasn't even stressful in that time because we gave ourselves time. And so I think giving yourself the gift of time and giving yourself the gift of just slowing down posture to say, I'm going to slow down, I'm going to do this right. Because if I do it the right way, it's actually going to go up the best way. And we always talk about how so many times when we do things faster, it actually takes longer because you end up making more mistakes. But if you do things more efficiently and you take the time to do it, it actually normally will go faster because the stress levels aren't there. The room for mistake isn't there because you're not, a lack of sleep or stress or whatnot. And so it's so important that you give yourself that time. But I love that. Make sure you have everything you need operating at 100% and then start it. I love that advice.
I love that you gave me the one to do from one of your favorite people.
Francine Rivers.
Yeah.
I know, I gave you that because I thought I didn't give us each other's people based off the person that said it. I gave it based off the advice they gave.
No, it's just funny. I just would have thought that honestly we would have flip-flopped. Her best piece of advice was from Proverbs 3, verse 5 through 6, which is written by Solomon. This is in the Old Testament. And this the verse I'm sure many of you know. It says, trust in the Lord and lean not on your own understanding. And we love that. When we were dating, we went through the book of Proverbs together. For those of you who do not know, when me and Sadie were dating, we did a Proverbs a day for 31 days. But no, I love this verse because it really speaks to me of, a lot of times I do think that I can lean on my understanding because I do think that I know what I'm doing a lot of times, which I need to have humility and say that I don't, because honestly, I really don't think I do, but I like to think that I do. And just for me to fully trust in the Lord and lean not on my understanding, but lean on His.
Yeah.
I think something that really helps me in my walk.
What I liked about her advice is that it was just scripture, and I think so many times when we think about, people always say, when I say, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given? It's like, whoa, that's a big question. Like, it's very intimidating. Even if you go back and watch so many of the podcasts and you watch it on YouTube, you'll see even people's face sometimes when they didn't prepare for it, they weren't ready for it. They're like, oh, that's a tough question. And I think, so often we think we have to say the best thing that we've ever heard in our life. We have to think about the most eloquent thing that we could think to say, the most impactful thing, the most powerful quote we've ever read or whatever, but there's something just so powerful about saying, the best piece of advice I've ever been given was straight from the Bible. And I think if we were really all honest with ourselves and really thought about it, the best piece of advice is from the Bible. So many of the pieces of advice that I practically use in my life on a daily basis are things that I learned from Scripture. And so I love that she pulled that from Scripture itself. And I'm like, yes, that is a great piece of advice. But we don't always look at Scripture as like advice that we're receiving, which I think we should. So I like the way that she said that.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. All right, the next one is from Emmanuel Acho, and he says, this is his best piece of advice: get to know Jesus. He is worth getting to know, and you are worth getting to know. Be you, because everybody else is taken. That's just really good. Why are you laughing at me?
Because I know when you don't know what to say.
No, because the way that this was quoted, I didn't know those were two separate things. So I was thinking
I think they are two separate things.
I was trying to think if that was two separate pieces of advice.
I think they are. But what I liked and I thought you were going to talk about is get to know Jesus. He's worth getting to know, because you are so good at that. Y'all, I cannot believe we are in December. There is so much fun that goes on with the holiday season, and we are getting ready for Passion 2023 over here. Hey, yo. So I don't always have a ton of time to spend catching up on my reading because, man, I'd love to sit down and soak it all in, but I got a toddler on the go. I got a baby in my tummy. We got lots of stuff happening, which is why I love Audible. It makes it so easy to listen throughout the day to your favorite titles, podcasts, whatever you got to listen to. It makes it so easy. So maybe you're in your house getting ready for the family to come over for the holidays, or maybe you're online shopping, whatever you're doing, you can play an Audible title while you're on the drive, while you're doing dishes, anywhere, anytime. This is a great place to pull out Audible. New members can try it for free for 30 days. One title that just came out is Lisa Turker's book called Good Boundaries and Goodbyes, and I'm so excited to listen to that. So Audible offers an incredible selection of titles from bestsellers and new releases to celebrity memoirs, mysteries and thrillers, motivation, wellness, business, and more. You'll also discover exclusive Audible originals from tons of names that you know. And as an Audible member, you actually can choose one title a month to keep from their entire catalog, including the latest bestsellers and new releases. You can listen all you want and get more titles added every single month, and it's all included with the membership that you have. So let Audible help you discover new ways to laugh, be inspired, or be entertained. New members can try Audible for free for 30 days. Visit audible.com/Sadie or text Sadie to 500-500. That's AUDIBLE.com/Sadie, or text Sadie to 500-500 to try Audible for free for 30 days. Audible.com/Sadie.
Yes, he is worth getting to know. Just the idea of we can go our whole life and you still learn something new every day. As we just talked about in Proverbs 3, 5-6, there's so much scripture. There's so much just wisdom in the Bible that you're always learning. You're always growing. You're never gonna, fully. I don't think you'll ever fully understand everything, and really just the love of Jesus, the depth of Jesus. I think it's something beautiful that you can always, learn something new about him every day, and you really can get to know him, whether it's through praying or worshiping or reading. And just studying. He is worth getting to know because he came on a mission, as Tim Tebow likes to say, to save us. You guys
say it like Tim Tebow. He came on a mission to save us. I love it so much. That's good. What was the thing about? Oh, I was going to say, for some of you, that might be a hard concept to think, you can never know all there is to know about God because he's infinite. He's the Alpha and the Omega. He's the beginning and how could we ever know? And sometimes that is hard for me because I'm the type of person, I don't think I've ever read the same book twice. I've never watched a TV series, no matter how much I love it, twice. I don't like to watch, movies unless they're Christmas movies, again, if I've already seen it. As to a Christian, we'll watch the same movie over and over and over again and never get tired of it. And my mom will read the same book. So many of my friends have watched, Gilmore Girls 6 times through, or The Office. You watch The Office 4 times. I just don't do that. If I read it, I read it. If I watched it, I watched it. And that's actually not a good quality in me because I think that what it what happens, and this is true of me, is I don't know how to quote so many of the shows that I've watched that so many other people can quote, because I could not remember to quote it because I've only seen it one time. Or, they'll be like, oh, remember this scene from this? And I've seen it, but only once, so I can't really remember it. It's been so long. Or I'll be telling you about a book, and I'm like, oh, this book is the best book ever. And what was it about? And I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to explain it, but I'm not doing a good job at it because I've only read it one time.
I'm terrible at stuff
and
like that.
I think that you can quote The Office like.
No, I'm saying a book. If I read a whole book and you say, tell me about it.
Okay, well, that is hard.
I'm like,
that is hard.
It's somewhere in my.
That is
my
hard.
brain.
And there are certain things that I can. If something sticks with me, I can tell you the entire chapter of the book. I could, truly, you've seen me. If a movie moment sticks with me, and many of you have heard me preach movie moments, I mean, that thing is stuck in my brain if it impacts me. So I am, something sticks with me if it impacts me, that is true. But I say it to say, there is something too, that the more you watch something, the more you read something, the more you know something. And I think sometimes with the Bible, I can struggle because I'm like, well, I just read the Gospels last year. But it's like, no, you should read them again, And I'm like, but I know them. But then I'm like, every time I reread them, I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. Even though, yes, I'd read that, but it didn't stick out to me the last time. Or, whoa, that's crazy. That's the character of Jesus. I never noticed that. And the more I read it, the more I know it, the more I read it, the more I quote it, the more I read it, the more I become it. And so I think that if you're like me and you don't really like that repetition of well, I've already done it, do I need to do it again? I think the Bible's different, because the more you study, the more you learn, the more you read, even if it's the same thing over and over again, and I'm preaching to myself, the more you become what the scripture is, the more you learn about the heart of Jesus, and you always see a new side of it, and it's just incredible. So I'm preaching that to me if I'm preaching it to anyone.
I do have a checkmate for you.
What?
Because you say you don't like watching things over and over again. Can you recall something that you've seen over and over again?
Christmas with the Crakes. Oh, Wonder Woman. Okay, I have watched Wonder Woman over and over again.
I know. Well, I'm saying for people listening who probably heard you preach about Wonder Woman, they're like, yeah, there's no way she's only watched it one time.
That's actually, yes, I have seen it, but I don't watch the whole movie. I watch clips on YouTube. I'll go back.
Baloney.
That is true.
Baloney.
I go back and watch the clip.
Yeah,
you do that too.
You've seen Wonder Woman at least 10 times.
No, sir. I don't think I have.
100%.
I think I've seen the clips.
No.
A ton of times.
No, definitely. No.
You've
seen it so many times.
Maybe I'm busted. Maybe I'm not. We don't know.
It was just the one movie. I was just
That's true.
recalling.
I thought you were talking about Christmas with the Cranks because we just watched it and I thought it was so funny. And you were like, no, we just saw it last year. And I was like, yeah, but it's Christmas. It's the time to watch it again. And then who laughed the hardest? You.
Me?
You. It is hilarious. Okay, anyways, back to the important things we're talking about. I love this. Aiden King was on the podcast, and his piece of advice was so good. You were also on with us, yes, because we had to get those people watching from other countries and to get you on it.
And territories.
Yeah, and territories. We had to make sure you were on it.
Big territory guy.
So we had a great piece of advice from Aiden King from Hillsong, and he said, don't worry about the things that haven't happened yet, which is so helpful in staying present in the moment. And it's so hard not to worry about what's, going to happen later in the future. I think most of us, if we were going to, write down everything we're worried about, it would be things that haven't happened yet. But that's even biblical. What does it say in the word? Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough worries of its own. I think Jesus said that, So as literally advice from Jesus himself, and such good advice, because if we start worrying about tomorrow, we got lots to be worried about. But my mom always says, take one day at a time. And sometimes I take that so literal that I literally will not know what tomorrow holds. And then I look at my calendar and I'm like, oh, shoot, I should have been preparing for that. But I do think taking one day at a time is so important. For instance, when I take one day at a time, I really am pretty stress-free. But we started planning my year for next year because I'm having a baby. So I'm going to take maternity leave, which requires a lot of planning involved with just the capacity at what LO is doing right now. And so I was literally planning my entire year till December. It is all planned. And I was getting so much anxiety. I was wanting to cancel things. I was wanting to back out of things. I was like, I can't do this. And my teammate was like, Sadie, don't think about it. Because when you get there, you're going to be having so much fun. You're going to love it. But having to plan that far in advance will naturally cause anxiety and worry because you don't know what that holds yet. And my whole thing is I'm gonna have 2 kids. I don't know what that looks like. And fear is so much the unknown, right? And so you really do just have to take one day at a time.
And that's even for us with COVID. Remember?
Yeah.
We had the busiest summer ever. We were gonna be in London and we were gearing up for this crazy busy spring and summer. And then COVID hit and none of it ever happened.
Yep.
And we were psyching ourselves out about it for so long. But I could be botching this. I'm pretty sure his dad gave him that advice. I think it was his dad.
I think it was.
But just with everything he was doing with music and just, like you said, the stress and the anxiety of the future for that, I'm pretty sure it was his dad that was like, don't worry about the things that haven't happened yet. Which is really cool because, none of us are guaranteed tomorrow.
So true.
And, the idea of, Lord willing, we're going to get the chance to go do this. So, just try not to stress it out.
I know. I try not.
Yeah.
I love this advice from Alexa Penavega, and it kind of reminds me of what I just said about Louie Giglio, about just not being afraid to slow down. But she said, don't be afraid to slow down. The miracles of Jesus seemed to happen when he was interrupted. And so love that advice, because so many times, like I said, one thing will happen and we think it messed up everything. And gosh, it's just so important that we welcome those interruptions in life, because life is full of interruptions. Jesus certainly welcomed them and embraced them. I think Jesus welcomed them because he knew he was capable of it. I think so many times we think one interruption is just going to throw us all out, but believe in yourself enough, believe in the God in you enough to know, I'm right where I'm supposed to be. Nothing would have happened that wasn't supposed to happen. And if it happened, I'm capable of living it. Jesus says in the word, like, you won't be tempted beyond what you can bear. You're going to go through hard stuff, but it's not going to be something that you can't endure, And so just knowing that this might be an interruption, but I'm capable of stepping into it. Okay, next one, Lisa Bevere. This one made me cry.
This was your favorite episode.
This was my favorite episode because it was the first time on the podcast, besides when we talked about our birth story, which was so raw. But it was the first time, I think, and I might be wrong, but I think this is true, that someone's ever made me cry because of it hitting me in a personal way. I probably cried hearing people's stories and stuff, but like it made me cry because it was like exactly what I needed to hear. And I think, I hear these statistics and like, oh, like these stats, like, wow, 16 million people listen to this podcast is crazy. Like all these people listen to this podcast, and I hear these people's stories, all of you guys, whenever I meet you on the airport, like, wow, this podcast changed my life. This podcast led me to Jesus. This podcast helped me get from here to there. And it means so much to me. But this was one of those moments where I was like, I need this podcast. Like, I need to be sitting here listening to this in this moment. Like, that is exactly what I need to hear. And it made me cry. And, man, it was so pivotal for me. We were just starting to talk about maybe trying for another baby. And all these fears started coming up of just my labor with Honey and being a mom and working and all this stuff. And mom guilt and all the things. And Lisa Bevere said, relax, your baby has no idea, you don't know what you're doing. And it was just like, it wasn't even just that, it was everything she was saying. It was her telling her story about motherhood, her telling her story about having a second, and everything about it was just like for me. So I was like, I don't know if this podcast is for anybody else, this is for me. And I was super thankful for that. And it was just a cool thing to experience on this podcast. Not that I haven't been impacted by everyone on the podcast, but that one was like so like personalized. Mm-hmm. And I think that's whenever this podcast means so much to people, is when they're like, that was for me. And it was cool to have that moment for myself.
Yeah. I've made you cry laughing before, though.
Of course.
Never like actually tears crying, but I've made you cry from laughing on the podcast. This next one's from Ann Wilson. And her advice was, keep Jesus first, front and center. Everything else will fall into place. I can't, you're moving it.
That's an accident.
That's okay. I forgive you. But no, I just love this advice because it's so, and I think she's not married. At least I don't think she is she? Mm-mm. I don't know. I don't think she's married. But even just, being single, and that advice plays out so much even in marriage or in relationships or whatever. Because for us, with our marriage, it's like, we've heard it said, if you view it like a triangle, we're the bottom corners of the triangle and Jesus is at the top. And, we're constantly looking at him, and that's going to help us love each other more. And it's the more that we get, I don't want to say consumed with one another, but if we focus more on each other than our individual love for him, then we, become less patient, or become less forgiving or graceful or whatever. But if we're constantly focused on him and, we're satisfied in his love and just content in that, then we're going to be better spouses to one another, better parents, better friends.
That's good.
And just better people.
That's good. I love this advice from Andy Downs, and we'll have to skip a couple as we go just because we're running low on time. And he said, know what your lane is and don't compare it to anyone else's lane. And I was thinking about this conversation we had the other day, and I thought it was so good. I don't know that Christian and I have ever, like, compared each other's lanes. Like, you haven't looked at my lane and compared, I haven't looked at your lane and compared to some extent. I think
more so because you're.
Well, I think
I'm way behind. You're like speeding. I think I'm going the speed limit here.
No, you're running just as fast as me, just in a different way.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, like, you don't really compare yourself to me, but what has been hard is that other people have compared our lanes to each other, which has been hard.
Yeah,
because
I just don't listen.
Yeah, but it's been hard. But we had this epiphany the other day that I was like, because, you know, people will be like, oh, was it weird because Sadie's doing so much and she's the wife or whatever. But I'm like, no, you don't understand how much Christian is doing as the husband of our family. And, like, we operate so well together. And then we were like, you know what? Like, isn't it awesome that God chose Mary to carry Jesus into the world? And, like, what a, like, role Mary had. That's a huge role. It's a huge responsibility. She was carrying the Messiah into the world. And Mary is, like, very well known for that, very well praised for that. Some people worship Mary because of that, you know? I mean, Mary was a big deal. But what is so awesome, though, is that God also, in the exact same way, I guess the same capacity that he chose Mary, he chose Joseph. You know, in the same way he trusted Mary, he trusted Joseph. And he knew that, like, Mary needed a Joseph. And for Joseph to take on that same level of responsibility and say, I'm going to, you know, one, stand with this woman, get married to this woman as my wife, even though this is such a crazy story. And then I'm going to be the father of the Messiah. That is a huge role. And so although Mary's role was a little bit more public, Joseph's role was just as crucial. And so I think that's why it's so important. You can't compare lanes, you know? It's like, well, Joseph couldn't carry the Messiah because Joseph was a man. It had to be Mary, right? And in some cases, you know, for whatever reason, it was supposed to be you because God chose you, because God created you to be able to do that. But just because your partners might look different or your best friends might look different or your cousins might look different doesn't mean that it's less than, because God in the same way chose you to do the things that he called you to do. And so I think that's why it's so important you don't compare, because who's to say the mother or the father's better? The mother and the father are important. You know, you need the mother and the father. And when I was reading that, I was like, this is so good. And I think it was so good for us because not that we needed that for ourselves as much, but we needed that for when other people say things like that. It's like, no, this is how it is. But I think that's so true in marriage. I think it's so true in relationships, friendships, cousin, family, all the things. It's like you can get so jealous of what other people have. It's like, hey, just trust that God chose them for a reason. God chose you for the reason that he has you in.
Yeah, well, it's even like, you know, if you look at the movie Cars, right? You have Lightning McQueen, you have Tow Mater, right?
Come on, baby.
Right? There are two stars in the movie, but Lightning McQueen's the one that gets all the action and all the attention. But who is his rock? Who is the one that tows him out of the cactuses? Who's the one that, you know, is there for him in the moral support? It's Tow Mater.
It's Tow Mater. Let's go.
I'm your Tow Mater.
You're my Tow Mater. But you're a lot cuter.
Yeah.
You're a clean Tow Mater, my baby. Oh my gosh, that was funny. Look at you pulling out a movie analogy out of nowhere.
Thank you.
I love that. All right, you want to hit the next one?
Yes, the top one?
Either one.
All right, this one's about cars. Okay, this one's from Chad Veach. Since we're talking about cars, his best piece of advice was, you're going to sell something. You're either going to sell cars or you're going to sell Jesus. So always try to promote not your thing, but his thing. Live for Jesus.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, that's so good. I think we're all, you know, even with social media, you know, we all have our thing that we are trying to influence people with, and we are trying to, you know, to sell ultimately. But more than that, we're trying to give people the gospel. We're trying to, you know, convert people. We're trying to be disciples to people. We're trying to make disciples, and just living a life where, you know, it looks less like you're selling them, and it's more just they're attracted to the way that you're living.
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, I think, focusing more on selling Jesus than trying to sell a brand or trying to sell yourself.
That was great. Next one's from Cody Carnes. I love this so much. He said, "You don't have to sacrifice your family for ministry. I'm not asking you to do that." And that's what he felt the Holy Spirit say to him. And that is so true, man. God's never going to call you to something that means you have to sacrifice, a covenant relationship like your marriage or your family, your kids. I think that's what I always tell my friends who struggle with mom guilt for working. I say, God has called you to do this, and it might look like ministry, it might look whatever work that looks like. But at the same time, if you have a family, if you're married and you have kids, then He is not going to call you to something that's going to contradict your other calling to be the mom that you are and the wife that you are. I think it goes together. And I always think, when I'm here, when I'm working, doing everything I'm doing for LO, doing podcasts, doing books, doing speaking, whatever it is, I'm like, you know what? This call is actually, it's helping my family. I'm believing that what I'm doing is making a better place for my kids to live in. I'm believing what I'm doing is providing for my family. What I'm doing is loving them well. And in the same way with things that Christian does, when he goes to the gym, which yes, is a part of his 4-8 ministry, like all the people that he has impacted up there at the gym, I'm like, yes, he's away from us right now. But when he comes back and he's filled and he's had this time with the Lord and he has these revelations and he went to lunch with so-and-so because they met at the gym and he ministered to them, or he gave a kid new shoes at the gym because they needed them. I'm like, that is benefited our family, and so I don't think that the two calls God puts in your life will contradict each other. I think they will complement each other quite well. Mm-hmm. The last piece of advice that I wanted to talk about was from Heather Thompson Day, which is recently on the podcast.
It was so unique and cool.
Good. And we had so many of you guys post that it was your favorite episode yet, which I agree in so many senses. It was so good and so much good advice. Heather Thompson Day, read the advice, babe.
It says, when it comes to marriage, if you get that one aspect of your life right, everything else can go wrong and none of it will matter. But if you get that one aspect wrong, everything else could go right and none of it would matter.
Which is so
Which is a
true.
firebomb.
At the end of the day, even when we talk about family and ministry and work ministry, it's like your family is your number one ministry, and if you're failing in that, you're going to feel like you're failing in everything, even if you're succeeding in everything. None of this would mean a whole lot, if at home my family wasn't thriving and feeling loved by me, and that I was loving them and serving them in the way that, God's created me to. And in the same way, our family can be so good and so right and everything's working great, and other things in work aren't going good, or other things in the outside aren't going good, but it feels at peace because our home's at peace. If your home is shaken, everything's shaken. If your home's at peace, everything's at peace. And so I think, the advice to that is pour into your home, pour into your family. Don't let your family and your people that mean the most to you get the last bit of energy that you have, get the scraps of your day, but try to give them your first, give them your best.
Yeah.
Train.
That's so good. Well, while the train's going, I want to circle back for a quick second on the stay in your lane. You heard me reference the cars, and I had another thought about cars. So if you think about it, Lightning McQueen won the Piston Cups, right? He was very talented, very gifted, very fast, but that was his lane, right? And if you also recall, Tomater, remember how fast he could go in reverse?
That's true.
No one else could go as fast as he could in reverse. See, so Lightning McQueen's lane was winning the Piston Cups. Tomater's lane was being the fastest in reverse, and everyone else was astounded. But yeah, stay in your lane.
Everybody has their gifting.
Everybody has their
giftings. Some are as flashy as others. Ka-chow.
Ka-chow.
Some are, a little bit different, but they all matter at the same level of importance to God. And God has given you what He's given you, not what He gave someone else. And so you're responsible for that. You're to be trusted with that. You're to steward that well. And so, man, there's so much good advice this year. I've personally learned so much this year, grown so much this year. I think we could say we grew 50% in numbers this year as far as people listening, but no, I grew 50% into a better person this year because of the advice that we've been given. And I hope you feel the same way. And I pray this podcast continues to grow in 2023, not just in, so next year we can say, listen to the number, but so we listen to the people that are impacted. Listen to the people that are impacted by words like this, that are rooted in scripture, that are to better your life, that are to make you the best version of yourself. And that's what Live Original is all about. It's encouraging people to live original, to be confident in who they're created to be the best original person that they're created to be. And I think this podcast is helping do that. It's certainly helping me do that. I hope it's helping you do that. So if you love this podcast, send it to a friend, get people involved with the Whoa That's Good podcast for next year. We have so many great guests already lined up. We actually have a ton of episodes already filmed for next year that you guys are going to absolutely love, that I have been impacted by so deeply already. And so next year is looking super bright in the podcast world with all the conversations that we're going to have. But y'all, we love y'all. We're thankful for y'all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting this podcast. Thank you for all the ways that you've encouraged us along the way. We hope that we encourage you as well. And we love you guys. So thank you so much. And I hope you have a great end to this awesome year and a great start to the next.
Ka-chow.
Ka-chow.